There has always been some debate over what actually is canon in the Doctor Who universe. We know that the TV series is canon, because that is the show. But what about the spin-off media? What about Big Finish, the comics, novels, and even video games? Personally, I believe that everything released under the Doctor Who logo is canon, in one way or another. To begin with, we know that the TV series is canon. To say that it isn't canon would be completely ridiculous, because out of everything in the vast universe of Doctor Who, the TV series Doctor Who is the original and flagship product, which is the source of any expanded media. Without the show, then nothing would exist in the Doctor Who universe. There just wouldn't be one. So we know that the show is canon, but what about the rest of it? Well, the next most logical product to examine are the audio releases produced by Big Finish. There has always been a big debate among fans over whether Big Finish was canon. Many would argue that it is, because it has all the classic Doctors in it, and the BBC has given the licensing for the team at Big Finish to make these adventures. However, on the other hand, others would argue that it wasn't canon because it wasn't actually a BBC product despite the license. Personally, I have always considered them to be canon, partly because I really enjoy them, and also for reasons displayed later in the video. The debate seemed to come full circle upon the release of The Night of the Doctor minisode in 2013, where upon regeneration, the 8th Doctor utters,
Charlie, Carey's Lucy, Tamsin, Molly. Friends, companions I've known, I salute you.
The names he recited were the names of his Big Finish companions that had had adventures with him at the time of release. Naturally, you can take the assumption that this means that Big Finish is canon. Well, at least the 8th Doctor adventures. But there are many stories where the 8th Doctor crosses paths with other Doctors, so we'll take this as meaning that all of Big Finish is canon. Even the Unbound adventures. The new adventures of Bernie Summerfield are canon, as they fall under the Big Finish brand, and this is easy to accept based on the fact that Sylvester McCoy appears in the Doctor in the first 2 seasons. Then, in Season 3, Bernice ends up in an alternate universe where the Doctor is David Warner. Or to be more precise, he is the David Warner Doctor from the Big Finish Unbound series. The Unbound series was a series of what-if adventures. For instance, what if the Doctor and Susan never left Gallifrey? Or what if the Valiant had won? And they would feature a new actor playing the Doctor, except for the Valiant episode. One of the Unbound Doctors was played by David Warner, who proved to be one of the more popular Unbound Doctors, because he came back to do a second Unbound story set after the first, and then he came back to do at least 2 box sets of Bernie Summerfield. This proves that he is in the canon of Doctor Who, in an alternate universe. In earlier Big Finish releases, we were graced with 2 brilliant stories featuring the companion of Frobisher the Penguin, probably the greatest companion in the expanded media of Doctor Who. He is a detective who can shapeshift, but chooses to remain in the form of a 3-foot-tall penguin. What's not to love? The more important fact, however, is that he was not one of Big Finish's creations. Instead, he first appeared in the Doctor Who magazine comic series. Now this makes the comics canon, right? Well, the problem is that in the Maltese Penguin, one of Big Finish's releases, he doesn't remember the lizard millionaire Josiah W. Dogbolter. But he'd met him in the comics, so are the comics not canon? Actually, they are. Yes, I can see your confused look through the screen, but pay attention, as this next bit is quite complicated. Absolutely everything is canon, even Scream of the Shauker. To help explain this, I'm going to use the Star Wars Legends series. Back in 2012, when Disney acquired the rights to Lucasfilms, and therefore Star Wars, they declared the entirety of the expanded universe to be not canon. This was so they didn't have to abide by that canon when making the sequel trilogy. They could just do what they want. The rejected canon was now branded Star Wars Legends. The sequel trilogy does have similarities to Legends, however, particularly in the character of Kylo Ren. He was born Ben Solo before turning to the dark side. In Legends, Han and Leia have a son called Jason Solo, who turns to the dark side. This is a clear similarity to Kylo, as they are both sons of Han and Leia, and both have turned to the dark side. Therefore, I take this as Star Wars legends being what it says on the tin. They are legends and stories about the Star Wars universe which may or may not have happened, or adventures similar to these could have happened. The same can be said for Doctor Who. All of the expanded media are stories told about the Doctor and his travels. Naturally, there would be mistakes when people are telling these stories. For instance, in the novelisation of The Daleks, titled Doctor Who and the Daleks, Susan has a different surname, Ian Smokes, and the caveman adventure of An Unearthly Child never happened at all. Ian is the narrator of this story, and it's him recounting the events, but apparently not quite remembering the details correctly. This even helps canonise the Peter Cushing movies. There are two possibilities for where this comes in Doctor Who canon. The first is that Barbara and Ian wrote stories of their adventures, and films were made of those stories. And these stories would have differences as a way not to upset the Doctor. Or these were stories told by people who were there. For instance, Doctor Who and the Daleks could be being told by the Thals, who have just remembered things a bit differently and interpreted the preceding scenes to when the Doctor arrived. And the same can be said for Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, where the humans involved in that story are trying to remember things in the future, and their memories are just a bit off, i.e. description of the Doctor's physical appearance. The method of calling all products legends and stories of the Doctor helps canonise everything. Scream of the Shauka happened, but the people involved just remembered the Doctor differently. All the expanded media where McGann's Doctor or Eccleston's Doctor fight the Time War instead of John Hurt is canon. It's just been remembered, possibly by the Doctor, as he didn't want to remember the War Doctor, differently. Of course, it all comes down to opinions. Some people will only dub the TV series as canon, and everything else either as an alternate universe or just nonsense. Others will pick and choose what they want to be canon, and that is absolutely fine. You have no obligation to find every single piece of merchandise and be expected to fit all the pieces together. I mean, even the TV show contradicts itself all the time. So, anyone can choose what's canon. This was just what I think. You may have realised that in the last couple of videos I have gone on about Big Finish quite a bit, and that is going to continue in the next video. As next week I'm going to talk about writers from Big Finish who need to write for the official series. Also, if you have any suggestions of topics you want me to talk about in these videos, leave them in the comment section and I will consider them and maybe make a video about it. See you next week.